Hello, Reagan here. Welcome to my channel. So, today we're gonna take a look at something that's not a sideshow gaff, but actually a cryptid. But we're not gonna start there. We're gonna look at something else that happened that kind of got overshadowed by this cryptid. In 1928, an I-bar chain suspension bridge was built, named for the color of its aluminum paint. The Silver Bridge carried commuters over the Ohio River via U.S. Route 35, connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and Gallipolis, Ohio. On December 15th of 1967, the Silver Bridge gave in. Future investigation would determine the cause of the collapse was a failure of a single I-bar in a suspension chain due to a small defect, 2.5 millimeters deep. That's like 0.1 inches. That's tiny. The bridge was poorly maintained. It was built at a time where there weren't nearly as many automobiles and as heavy of rush hour traffic as there was by the time it actually collapsed. This bridge lasted a total of 39 years, carried untold numbers of commuters and, people back and forth for 39 years, and then finally just couldn't do it anymore. At the time of the Silver Bridge construction, I-bar bridges had been built for about 100 years. They, were just kind of a pretty common thing. The thing about the I-bars were not redundant, but they were pretty strong. They should have lasted. If it wasn't for this one minute little thing, who knows how long it would have lasted, but it didn't. At the time of its construction, a typical family automobile was the Ford Model T with a weight of about 1,500 pounds or 680 kilograms. The maximum permitted truck gross weight was about 20,000 pounds or 9 tons. By contrast, at the time of the collapse, a typical family automobile weighed about 4,000 pounds or 1,800 kilograms, and the large truck limit was 60,000 pounds or 27 tons. Okay, editing Reagan, hopping in here really quick just to say I lost some of the footage of painting the hat because my SD card failed. I also lost some of the hand embroidering footage from later on for the lettering. But, these things happen. So, yeah. Anyway, back to it. And there were constantly traffic jams and, total gridlock, rush hour traffic, happens all the time. Yeah, but this bridge was not built for that. It was not built at a time when that was an issue. So, yeah, there would have really been no way for them to have known that this was going to happen, because that small of a crack and the part that was cracked wasn't something that was easily noticed. They would have had to have taken it apart to have known that it was there. And we didn't have advanced enough technology to detect stuff like that without actually hand looking at it and disassembling it, This did bring a lot more attention to the fact that this wasn't the only, antiquated bridge that was probably really sketchy and ran a chance of something else like this happening. It inspired legislation to ensure older bridges were, regularly inspected, maintained, repaired, replaced when need be, and things of that nature. So, unfortunately, there's still a lot of failing infrastructure in the U.S. So, this helped, but, we still have these kinds of problems, unfortunately, but not to this extent, luckily, and knock on wood, as far as the number of casualties involved. We're going to go back a little bit further and look at some of the events leading up to the bridge collapse. I just wanted to talk about that first. 46 lives were lost, and this was a horrific thing. And, a lot of people feel like that tragedy was kind of overshadowed by our topic, our next topic here. Those people need to be remembered, and that's very important. But sometimes grief takes on different forms, and people find other things to kind of focus on, to look at it different, to deal with it, to cope. I don't know. A year before, in mid-November of 1966, there were a couple of couples out hanging out in the woods, and they saw something. They saw something while they were out in those woods. in Point Pleasant that scared them. That spooked them real bad. They were terrified. They ran directly to the sheriff's department and told the sheriff, "Hey, we saw this humanoid figure, 10-foot wingspan, big red glowing eyes, absolutely terrifying." Just horrifically terrified. These people, it was very real to them, and they were very, very scared. Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallette told police, what they saw. They said that it was near a TNT area, the site of a former World War II munitions plant. They described it as having white wings, being slender and tall. A lot of the belief, like why it has the name Mothman, was closely related to the Batman comic books. At the time, the Batman TV series was popular, pretty prominent in the public eye, and there was a villain, Killer Moth, that was shown in the comic book. Didn't show, wasn't featured in the show, but actually was in the comic book. People believe that had a lot of influence on naming Mothman. This first initial sighting created this snowball effect of people saying that they'd seen it. A bunch of people got their guns and went out to the area to go see if they could hunt down the Mothman. Of course, they didn't find anything, but they went and looked. People were telling tales of Mothman attacking the roofs of their cars. There were all kinds of people seeing this thing and describing it. And, there were all kinds of theories as far as what this actually was. Some people say it was maybe a large owl, like a barred owl, or a great blue heron, a sandhill crane, some kind of a bird that was out of its, deviated from its migratory path, something of that lines, something out of season migratory bird. Quickly, they went from, these couples saying they saw it to at least 100 people supposedly seeing it, with a bunch of other stories that were, of people like not reporting it because they were afraid to or embarrassed to or whatever, didn't think they'd be taken seriously supposedly, but they had fully seen it. It was a thing. And a legend was born, was created, found its way deep into pop culture at this point, mostly due to what happened a year later, the bridge collapse. A lot of people claim and believe that Mothman was like a harbinger of death, or trying to warn people of what was to come. Some people claim they saw Mothman on the bridge the day before the bridge collapsed. But, either way, like the bridge collapse was kind of an imminent thing. Point Pleasant held its first annual Mothman Festival in 2002, which has really upped the tourism in the area. They've kind of capitalized on this thing. They have a full-size Mothman, like life-size Mothman statue in the middle of town. They have a Mothman Museum and Research Center, opened in 2005. Their festival is held the third weekend of every September. They do like all kinds of crazy things. They have hay rides and pancake eating contests, different vendor exhibits, stuff like that. Yeah, they've really kind of embraced it and kind of capitalized on it, which, whatever. It's a thing that's really been woven into our culture, our pop culture, and it's pretty fascinating. So there you have it. A little bit of history of the Mothman and the unfortunate collapse of the Silver Bridge. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.